Monica?
Hi, everyone. This is Monica Gonzalez, Senior Program Director for Enterprise's Gulf Coast office located in New Orleans. I want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon. As Donna said, this is a continuation of our quarterly webinar series for Enterprise Green Communities in the Gulf. Today we're going to be talking about the certification process because I think that's one of the most asked questions we get. So hopefully this will be helpful to folks looking to certify, whether it's for tax credits or some other affordable housing program or just because your organization is committed to doing green communities. We hope you find this helpful. So I'll turn it now over to Krista Eggers, Director of Enterprise Green Communities, to get us started.
So much, Monica, and thank all of you for joining on the webinar this afternoon. I'm going to be sharing a little bit about the context and background of Enterprise Green Communities, then a high-level overview of the 2015 Enterprise Green Communities criteria, and then really try to focus the bulk of our time on the actual certification process, leaving plenty of time for questions so we can make sure that you're getting exactly what you need out of this session in order to be able to successfully certify your next project. As Donna and Monica mentioned, this is the third of a series of 4 workshops focusing on green building topics dedicated towards the Gulf. And today we're really going to be focusing in on the Enterprise Green Communities Certification Program. So those of you on the line may know that Enterprise is a national nonprofit. We work all over the country, both in local areas such as the Gulf Coast, as well as working nationally, which is where our green building program fits in. And so all the while we're either focused on increasing the quantity of affordable housing or improving the quality of affordable housing with our stakeholders across the nation. And while we have been around for about 30 years, our green building program was established in 2004. That's when we had been hearing from a number of our partners that they were interested in pursuing a strategy that would result in homes that were energy efficient and healthy and safe and durable and comfortable for their residents, but weren't exactly sure how to go down that path of green building. So we brought some of the best minds across the industry together to get the first Enterprise Green Communities criteria. And we've updated it a few times since. And so over the past 12 years, we put great value in stock and feedback from the field with people who are implementing the criteria so that we can determine how best we can improve it or develop tools or deliver technical assistance to make green not just a best practice, but really a standard practice in the affordable housing realm. And our program, while it's a green building program, as our other green building programs that exist around the country today, such as UBC's LEED program or South Face's Earthcraft program or the Home Builders Green Building Center program, are a little bit different because it focuses exclusively on the affordable housing market. There's no fee for certification, and we really designed the program to focus in on developing a quality product that's going to improve the lives of the residents who are living in these buildings. That's what we're all about, so focused in that affordable housing sector niche. And we have certified properties in 39 states in the District of Columbia. We have 93,000 certified units in our pipeline, and we work with hundreds of developer teams all across the nation. So this includes working on new construction projects as well as rehabs, multi-family projects as well as single-family, urban as well as rural. So we have a number of certified projects in New Orleans and in more rural parts of the state of Louisiana and Mississippi as well. For those of you calling in, I'd be happy to share the list of certified projects with you guys in your part of the country. If you're interested, we can follow up on that at the end of the call. So what are the Green Communities criteria? They are different strategies broken into these 8 categories. So we start at the top with integrative design, which are really process-based measures. There's a location and neighborhood fabric, which is about where you're going to locate your project. site improvements, then water conservation, energy efficiency, materials, healthy living environment, which includes everything from ventilation strategies to incentivizing a no-smoking policy in a building to thinking about active design, so a whole range of measures related to healthy living environment. And wrap up with our 8th category, which is operations, maintenance, and resident engagement. And really, the learn from operating properties built to this standard or others in your portfolio will then feed into that integrated design process with your next project. That's a little about what the criteria, how that is framed, but in order to actually certify to show that you've met the intent of the criteria in full, each project needs to satisfy all of the mandatory criteria that are found throughout each of those 8 categories, then achieve a certain number of optional points. So if you're working a new construction project, that's at least 35 points. If you're going to rehab, the bar is slightly lower, so we're looking for you to achieve at least 30 points. And then to follow our certification process, which is largely an online process that I'll describe a little bit later for you. For you that are familiar with our older version of the criteria, the 2011 version, and are wondering what's different in the current 2015 version of the criteria, these are the 3 main categories. So first, the 2015 criteria really address health and resilience in projects more than ever before. We're looking at actual project performance data in terms of energy and water usage in a more nuanced way than ever before. And finally, projects pursuing certification to our 2015 criteria must explore best practices of transit-oriented development if they're in construction, offering to connect to community amenities in more meaningful ways than ever before. So these are 3 top takeaways if you're curious about what the update really focused on. And I'm going to get into some of the details of the criteria and certification in a moment. But after this webinar, if you want more information or if you'd like to see the latest and greatest information that we're posting up on our website, I encourage you to go to the address that's seen here at the top of your screen, enterprisecommunity.org/green, and then click on Criteria and Certification, and you'll head to a page that looks similar to this, what you're seeing here. And from here, you can either click through to the Green Communities criteria picture box on the top left to learn about the standard itself, or you can click on that certification picture box on the top right to learn more about the certification process. So let me tell you a little bit about what are pages. So criteria page, these 6 hyperlinks that you'll find on the web page can be really valuable for you. So the first one is the full criteria manual. So not only spells out the requirements of each criterion, but also some recommendations and resources. The next one, the criteria checklist, is a kind of like a Cliff Notes version of the manual. It includes just a shorthand version of the requirements for each of the measures in our criteria. And this is really useful for you guys to use when you're planning a project in the early stages and determining, which criterion you really want to pursue to meet your project needs and who's going to be accountable for meeting those. So I encourage you to check out that checklist as well as manual. Third bullet point you can ignore because you're not in New York City. The 4th one is our FAQ. We update this every so often. I believe the last update was made this spring. Just questions that we're seeing. If we see several people asking the same question, we'll include that in an answer and publish it online in the FAQ. The addenda is slightly different than the FAQ, in that the addenda includes slight changes or adjustments that we've made to the actual criteria itself after it was published. So we have a few in there right now, but I'd encourage you to check it out as you're thinking about certifying a project. And then finally, the last bullet point here, the criteria ambassador brief, just includes some high-level information about the criteria that you can use to describe describe what you're pursuing and what kind of achievement you're really making when you go through this process to your project stakeholders, funders, community members, residents. It's written in a way that can be accessible and that can describe really what you're doing differently than a built to code and what values are associated with that. So these are the resources on that criteria page. If on the other hand you click through to certification instead of criteria, you would see these. So I think the most important document on our website, apart from the criteria, is the third item that you see written on this page, which is the supplemental document instructions. So when you're preparing to come through Green Communities with a certification application, for every measure that you're pursuing, we're going to ask you to pick in from a drop-down box that describes your strategy and potentially add a few words in the text box to really let us know what you're doing in that regard. And for maybe 20 or so criteria that are more involved than all of the others, we're going to ask you to upload various attachments so that we can really see and evaluate how you have or have not incorporated a certain green measure into your project. And if you're wanting to know what those attachments are that we're going to ask you to upload before we actually get to that point in the certification process, just load this Excel document, the supplemental document instructions document, and it spells out for every single criterion what is required for you to upload at the first stage or pre-build stage of certification and the final and second stage, the post-build stage of certification. So I encourage you to look at this in your planning so that you can make sure that everyone's on board with gathering the right information at the right point in time. And those 7 different bulleted items, bottom of the page here, are different templates that were created that you can use to satisfy some of those items that we are asking you to upload. For instance, with criterion 1-2A, Health and Wellbeing Design for Health template, we've put together a spreadsheet that you can easily use to let us know how you're intending to comply with that criterion. So you would download the spreadsheet, edit it with your project information, and then upload it in your certification application. So just, these bullet items at the bottom of this page here are in support of the information that's called out in that supplemental document instructions page. So one of the most important resources for you to check out. Let's move on, and I'm going to give you a high-level overview of each of the 8 categories, and we'll come back and dive more into what's actually involved with the steps of certification. And before I get started describing these 8 categories, I do want to point out that we have research to determine what it costs to pursue Green Community certification as compared to building to code, because I know that's one of the questions that project teams who have never pursued this type of green building program before are always curious about up front. And so we have those reports up on our website, that same enterprisecommunity.org/green website that I showed you earlier. You go to our research section, you could download those reports. But on average, in the last study we did on this, which was published in 2012, found that there was an average of a 2% cost of the total development cost for building and certifying to green communities. It was a bit less than 2% for new construction and a little bit more than that for rehabs, averaged out to about 2%, and the payback was about 5.5 years. We are currently gearing up to do an update of that study that we hope to have in our hands about 1.5 years from now. Our expectation is that that incremental cost difference will have decreased slightly, given changes in the marketplace today with available materials, as well as how the contractor base has been better trained and had more exposure to the green building strategies that we're all working with today. So I want to get that fact out there before we dove into the weeds a little bit here. So I'm going to start with Category 1. So Category 1, integrative design, includes measures that are really process-based and designed to ensure that your team, with all variety of perspectives and expertise that are really required to pull off a project, communicate together before the plans and specs are finalized so that the objectives that you have for your project and potential goals for sustainability are intertwined together and strategies are laid out in a way that will be easy to achieve. We've found that the projects that spend the most time and actually concentrate on having a holistic, integrative design process up front are the ones that have the lowest project costs overall. So I'd encourage you to focus in on this. Okay. The 1.1a measures here are focused on general goal setting for the project. We'll be asking you to tell us when you come in with your certification application answers to these 3 questions here for 1.1a. So an overstatement of what your green goals are for the project, summary of the process that you use to get there, and third, how you plan to track those goals over time. So your answers to these 3 questions can be accomplished in as full of a Word document with a few sentences in answer to each of these 3 questions, or be more involved. But this is something that any project team, whether they've approached green building before or not, can really achieve and should help guide their whole project development. The measures that are in Category 1 have to do with really focusing in intentionally on how my building affect the health of the residents. We look at that through 1.2a and b. And then how can I make my building more resilient to potential natural disasters or hazards that will come up? Enrich that for criterion 1.3a and b. Neither of these mandatory measures require outside additional expertise apart from that you have on your project team already. And we have some pretty specific processes that you just follow in the criterion to really identify what the needs of your project are, and then pick a measure to solve for that. So that's Category 1, integrative design. Category 2, location and neighborhood fabric, includes more measures than the ones that I've included the titles to here on this slide, but it's really about selecting a site that's going to have minimal negative environmental impact on the surrounding area and positive impact in terms of locating a project in an area where the residents will be able to have access to all the services that they need to live a good life. Category C is site improvements, and this is one of our smaller categories. All of the measures are listed here, but this category focuses in on best practices for landscaping, irrigation, stormwater management, etc. So it's really how, when you're disturbing the land and creating your project, can you manage that disturbance so that it has minimal negative environmental impact? 4, water conservation is really focused on simple measures that can reduce how much water your residents use. So this has everything to do with fixture choices with different spec limits. And then 4.2, 3, 4.4, 4.5, 4.6, all optional measures that you can choose from, going above and beyond our water conservation targets through 4.2, or install a system to determine how much water is actually leaking out of your pipes via 4.3, having an efficient plumbing layout and design so you're not wasting hot water in your project, or with 4.5, reusing rainwater for perhaps irrigation or laundry needs. 4.6, potentially design a project in such a way that even if the power grid went out, the residents in your project would still be able to access access the potable water that they need. So pretty straightforward measures here, but that can have a big impact on people's pocketbooks and on the amount of this precious natural resource. 5 is energy efficiency. So we include reference to the Energy Star Homes program for new construction low-rise projects. That's the project type that we see most often coming through in the Gulf, but depending on what construction type you have, you might fit into either 51A, which is low-rise new construction, 51B, which is high-rise new construction, 51C, which is low-rise rehab, or 51D, which is mid or high-rise rehab. Regardless of which pathway you fit in here, you will need to partner with a HERS rater. And there is a sampling protocol available. So if you have a large project with a large number of units, you don't have to test every single one as long as other parameters are met. I included a few slides here today on information relevant to the Energy Star New Homes program, because you get a number of questions about how to satisfy that program. But what I really encourage you to do is go back to the recording that we made at the beginning of this year when we did a webinar exclusively on the Energy Star Homes program to find out the nuts and bolts of that. But I did want to draw your attention to the fact that to apply to the Energy Star program, you do need to work with a HERS rater. And to find a HERS rater, you can go to the Energy Star website, and this is a quick screenshot of all of the HERS raters that do work in Louisiana today. So you can see that there are a number that you can choose from. And then also for the Energy Star Homes program, you need to work with an HVAC contractor that's been trained in the details of the Energy Star program. And you can find which organizations, which HVAC contractors have been trained in that program by either looking at the Advanced Energy website or the ACA website. And it's included on this slide here a screenshot of the map so that you can see that there are about 9 to 11 organizations in the greater New Orleans area that are credentialed for you that you could use in your next project. And for more information on, go to that website to find those HERS raters, you can go to the first web link that I've included here, more about the partnership information for Energy Star at the second link that you see here. And then you can find those credentialed HVAC contractors by going to the ACA or the Advanced Energy websites, whose links I've included here. And we'll be sure to email this presentation around to everyone that registered for it at the end so that you can have these at your fingertips to look up more information about this program. So to recap, we first touched on integrative design, which is kind of that holistic planning before a project gets started. Then location and neighborhood fabric is about where you're going to site your project. Then site improvements, then water efficiency, then energy efficiency. And that energy efficiency section is really the main section where you do need to hire an external consultant to guide you through the energy efficiency information. Nearly all of the other measures in our program can be done by the project team themselves without hiring an external consultant. And we can get more into the roles and responsibilities at the end of the hour. But moving on into category 6, materials. This category includes a number of different items. These are just about how you're going to spec out different products that you're putting in your building. And then we do get into what are you going to do at the end of the life cycle for those products in terms of construction waste management and recycling. Category 7 has a large number of measures, but we have certain ventilation requirements for new construction projects or that are offer rehabs. And there are a number of optional measures in this category, including pursuing a smoke-free building or really going above and beyond with active design to create a property that's going to encourage people to be active, physically active, longer periods of time and more frequently than the norm. So lots of great information and strategies there. And then we wrap it up with Category 8, Operations, Maintenance, Resident Engagement. And these 6 different criteria that are in this category are designed to ensure that all of the great thought and work that your design, development, and construction team put into creating a green building is going to be carried forth when the building is actually in operations. So we are going to ask you to put together a building maintenance manual, an emergency maintenance manual, and a resident manual. Templates of all 3 of these we have on our website, so it should not be a heavy lift, but it does provide you a resource to ensure that your property will be maintained in a certain manner moving forward. And resident property manager orientation is 8.4, and then 8.5, 8.6 is about tracking that energy data for your property. So at all, we've covered all of these 8 categories. I'd really encourage you to go to the website, take a look at the manual or our checklist to determine which strategies really make sense for your project. When it comes down to it, and we're thinking about how can we apply these criteria, these categories to a project to make them that environmentally and financially sustainable, there are a number of things that we need to think about. First and foremost, I'd encourage you really about what are the goals of your project. Is it to house a certain population in a certain way? Is it to provide affordable housing in an area of your county or state that really lacks affordable housing? You know, what are the goals that you have? And then identify strategies within our criteria that can help you achieve those goals. So what we encourage every project to do at the very beginning, take a look at that checklist version of our criteria and send through it and identify which of the measures in the program you may have already planned on meeting if you weren't thinking of certifying the green community. So mark off which criterion might be easy wins for you. And then go through it and mark off which criterion might be those stretch goals. Maybe you want a zero energy house. Maybe you want a property that's going to use a very small amount of water. Maybe you're really focused on the health aspects of your property. Whatever it is, mark off those stretch goals after you've identified those easy wins. And then take a look and see what you need to do to really make sure that you've hit all of the mandatory measures and achieved the right number of optional points. And we've come to that kind of understanding. It's a good to transition into, well, how are we going to make sure that this actually happens on site? And how are we going to prepare our application to submit to Enterprise to review it in pursuit of certification? So, you know, that's time early on where it's prompt, when it's right to identify that HERS rater or that energy consultant that will help you with that category and make sure they're involved in the early planning. And otherwise, give responsibilities of accountability for the criterion across your project team. So that may include folks from the owner/developer or architect or the engineer. But you know, take a look at who will be responsible for seeing these different methods through, and taking a look at that supplemental document instructions that I mentioned at the top of the hour is really important at this point, so you don't have any surprises later on. But we see a variety of different types of accountability teams coming through with certification applications. Sometimes a green building consultant is responsible for everything. More often, though, we see that a green building consultant or a HERS rater is responsible for the energy efficiency portion, but then either the architect or the owner is responsible for the rest. So it's really up to you to determine what makes sense for you, but I want to emphasize that it should not be too heavy of a lift for a project team that is even pursuing something like this for the first time for them to take on. So to help you through this process, we literally have hundreds of resources online related related to green building items. So if you go to the Green website, on Tools and Services, you'll be led to a page that has all of these picture boxes here. And I'd like to highlight a couple of these for you. So the second box, the Charrette Tools box, includes all sorts of great information and agendas and sample exercises to help you pull together that pre-planning meeting ahead of your project. The bottom left box, Construction Specs Templates, includes specifications written in the master spec format of our 2015 criteria. So if you're putting together a bid package or you're wanting to insert certain criterion into the contract of your contractor, you can cut, copy, paste different items from our construction spec templates to ensure that your team is going to be following through on all of the measures. And I'm going to highlight a couple other of these for you. So if you click on that resident engagement box that you see at the top left here, you'll be brought to a page which includes this information. This is customized and developed around our 2015 criteria with lots of focus group input to make sure that all of this is going to connect with residents in a proper way. So there's a template for a resident manual for you to use along with instructions about how you can customize it. And actually in the coming weeks, we'll have a Spanish version of this up on our website as well as the English version. You can also click on that Operations and Maintenance box and find templates and checklists and guidance for green or sustainable building operations tasks. They find here, again, they're completely customizable, and we'd encourage you to take them and really make them your own. And thirdly, if you click on Tools for Resilience, you'll find a number of different toolkits and strategies that we have here to help your organization prepare to withstand and respond in a positive way to potential hazards. So I've covered the context of green communities, high-level overview of all of our criteria categories, and then some of the resources that are available to you that you can apply in that strategy that I discussed about looking for easy wins, stretch goals, and then accountability. But let's look a little bit closer at the actual process of certification. So certification of green communities includes two different steps, pre-build and post-build. And the way that you post information to enterprises through our website. So you go to that criterion certification page that we looked at earlier and click through to the certification portal. That's where you'll begin. But essentially, whether pre-build or post-build, you'll provide basic information about the project itself and then about how the project is planning to comply with our various criterion, and then you'll upload a few attachments. So specifically at pre-build, which you'll do before construction begins, you'll complete the project overview section, which includes questions like how many units do you have in your project, what's the size of the building, what's in those sorts of things, some basic information about the project. And then intended methods is essentially a checklist version of our criteria. And then for the strategies that you are pursuing, you'll pick from a drop-down list about how you're actually going to be in compliance with that measure. And then we'll add a few words to further describe that strategy. And for certain criterion, you'll also upload an attachment. And so for every project at pre-build, you'll upload a site plan so we can really tell information about your site and the infrastructure that's there. You'll upload a context map that will show us what distance your project is away from certain services, for instance. The modeling form that has to do with that 5.1 criterion. Outlines for the Category 8 items, so an outline, not a completed manual, but just an outline for the Resident Engagement Manual, the Building Operations Manual, and the Resilience Manual. And other little documents as necessary. So the 6 that I called out, the site plan, the context map, the energy modeling form, and the 3 Category 8 outlines are required for every single pre-build project. And depending on which optional measures you choose to follow, you may have other supplemental documents to upload. And those are all spelled out in that supplemental document instructions form. So once you submit that information to us, we'll get a notification and get back to you within 30 days. We'll either let you know that you're approved and you're fine to move on, or we'll say we need additional information for this item, and this item. You know, we'll give you specific guidance so that you can come back and adjust your application, resubmit, and hopefully be approved the next time. You've been approved for pre-build. You build your project. And you're working with that energy professional throughout the process. And once you've completed your project, once it's finished, you'll come back to our online portal, you'll open up that application that you began at pre-build, and you'll update it. So you'll let us know if there's different information about your project in general, or if you decided to pursue different optional criterion, or same optional criterion but in different ways, you'll update that information for us and upload certain supplemental docs for us to review. And again, we'll get that back to you within 30 days or less. So you exactly what the portal does look like. So if you go to enterprisecommunity.org/screen, click on Criteria and Certification, and click that certification portal box. As I mentioned, you'll go to a page that looks like this. It has that ever important supplemental document instructions page link here. But if you click through to the Get Started for the certification portal, you'll end up at our certification portal. And the first thing that you'll see if you've never been there before is the box that I've pulled out and put on the slide that's on the right of your screen right now, where I have email address and password. So you'll set up a login to be able to access the portal. And then you can create, as you want, dozens, hundreds of projects, if you'd like, that will be attached to your login. So whenever you do come into the system, you'll see all the projects and what status they are in Pipeline, and you can edit and go into any of those that are still active. You can also link individual people to a certain project record. So if you had a project, let's just call it Maple House, and like the architect and the engineer and the energy consultant all to be attached, you'll just let us know, and we can link all of those people to the same record so that all of you can edit it when you'd like as well. So when you come in and create an account, you'll just give us some basic information about you and your organization, and then you're ready to actually create a project. So at the top of your screen here, you see that bar that says Your Projects. And if you had previously existing projects in the system, they'll be listed beneath, and you could click those and edit them. But if to create a new one, you'd click that orange box that's at the top right that says Create a New Project, and then you'd see this box that we've put on the screen right below that pop up. And you pick which certification template you should follow. The first two have to do with New York City, so you would not follow either of those. You would do this third one, Certification Workbook 2015. And you have 2 other inputs that you must make. One is construction type, whether it's new construction, substantial rehab, or mod rehab. And then the other location, whether it's rural, tribal, small towns, or it's urban/suburban. So once you've made these 3 choices, the certification template, the construction type, the location, you hit Next, and we will created for you a specific template of our criteria that relate to that construction type and location that you entered. You won't have to be seeing the criteria related to rural projects, for instance, if you're in an urban location, or related rehab projects if you're new construction, for instance. So you'll select these items and then go into that intended methods section website. As I mentioned before, you'll get information about each of those criterion and upload certain items. That's an overview of the criteria and the certification process. I want to hear and see what questions people may have about things related to what I've said so far.
And just a reminder that if you have questions, please type them into the Q&A box that's located on the lower right-hand side of your screen. And while we want to see what questions we get in, just a reminder that this session is being recorded. So if you happen to miss part of it or you'd simply like to revisit, the recording will be made available to all registrants.
Hear me? No, it's on me. I think one of the questions we get asked a lot is about the HERS rater. Can you just talk a little bit more about when you should engage the HERS rater in the project and how they, once again, fit into the certification process?
Definitely. So while our program has those 8 different categories, energy is one of them. It's certainly an important part of all of this. And to show and to ensure that the project is going to meet a certain level of energy efficiency, we rely on the Energy Star program for the new construction projects that come through. And so in order to certify a home or a project to Energy Star, you can work with someone who has achieved the designation of HERS rater. It stands for Home Energy Rating System. So our HERS. So you can go to that partner locator page on the Energy Star website that I showed you a little bit earlier to find the different HERS raters that have done work in your area if you've ever worked with one before. And I'd really encourage you to call, 2 or 3 of them to find out about their experience and to get references from them and call those references to determine not only do they have the right technical expertise, but is it going to be a solid working relationship, and are you all going to be able to communicate well with the rater throughout the process, because they'd be involved at the very beginning. Because they're going to be able to give you different strategies, suggestions, ideas about how you could build your project or design your project so it would meet the level of efficiency that you're after. So they'll be able to use an energy modeling software program to run different potential iterations of your building to determine how much energy those different iterations would use. And you can decide which one makes sense for you based on your efficiency goals and how much it costs to build in that way. So your rater should be with you from the very beginning and come out on site at different stages throughout construction to make sure that everything is being installed correctly. Then once the project is done, they'll come out and do a few different tests on the building to make sure that it's up to the Energy Star standard. And then they'll be able to give you an Energy Star certificate. That will be one of the uploads that you give us when you're coming in for post-build once the project is done. That's what we'll be looking for. So that's the general, gist of this. I kind of described what should happen in the context of a new construction, single-family, or low-rise project. Slightly different process for rehabs and for mid-rise, high-rise projects. The moral of the story is the same for all project types, that you need to find a rater and work with them early on and then throughout construction and at the very end. But apart from that partnership with the HERS rater, the additional development team shouldn't hire another professional that's outside of the norm of their normal team. But what really do emphasize is you work in an integrated way with all of those folks who are on your team. Having a developer, the architect, the engineer. If you have a landscape architect, your HERS rater if you have some residents or community members, if you have property managers from other properties, all of these people are going to provide a really valuable perspective when you're putting your project plans together in the beginning. I think we have a question.
We do. Let's see. One of the issues I see, she says, is a lot of developers trying to cut costs on the ventilation requirements, and in this climate often can create mold problems. Do you anticipate updates from Enterprise Green communities to discourage these practices?
Well, that's a good question. New construction and rehab projects, we require that developers install bath ventilation, kitchen ventilation, and a means of ventilating the whole apartment. And that strategy can come a number of different ways, right? From a kind of low-end strategy of relying on a bath fan to a high-end strategy of a balanced ventilation system like an ERV or an HRV. For mod rehabs, we don't require those ventilation strategies, but we incentivize them. And the reason we don't require them is because oftentimes they want the physical space of the building to install a duct or to have a chase in to go out an exterior wall where you have the proper clearances. It's just sometimes can be really difficult. So with rehabs, we give a lot of optional points for installing ventilation, but we don't require it. But for the other project types, we do require it. And we certainly do not plan on backing down from any of that at all moving forward. And I'd be happy to follow up with you, the listener here offline, if you have specific examples of way you're seeing developers, as you say, trying to get out of, installing the proper ventilation systems. I'd really like to follow up on that. In hot, humid climates, ventilation can be even more important than in other parts of the country. But that said, you can't get away with a low-end ventilation system in a humid climate exacerbating moisture issues. So looking at what the ramifications are of the ventilation system that you're planning to install is really important. And it might mean looking at a balanced ventilation system to ensure that you won't have mold in the property when pursuing this type of strategy. So happy to follow up with you on that offline.
Thank you.
I think it's a good point, Krista, is that if somebody has a technical question or a question on certification, there's a mailbox directly for that, correct?
Yeah, right. Let me see if I included it on the final slide. It looks like I did not. But the best way for you to get information is email our team at certification@enterprisecommunity.org. And no matter who our team is, sick or on vacation or whatnot, someone's always checking that box. And if they don't know the answer right away, they'll get in touch with someone else on our team who does. So you can feel confident that you'll get a response if you go there. Happy to talk through, any type of question with the team. We address questions about flooring choices, ventilation system strategies, resident manuals, anything and everything related to the criteria. We're happy to discuss with you.
I'm not seeing any additional questions. Krista, did you have any wrap-up words for us?
I did want to let everyone know that the fourth and final webinar for this year is going to be December 8th. And we are calling it Green Resources because we really wanted to put in place kind of a repository for people in the Gulf to know what different resources are really at your fingertips to help you achieve your sustainability goals, whatever they may be. So we're planning to highlight resources from local HERS raters to sustainability consultants to emotional and technical resources, utility programs, and looking closely at the Housing NOLA Sustainable Design resources and more. So if there's anything in particular that you would really like for us to include in that session, feel free to reach out to me or to Monica and see if we can't include it.
To reiterate, we'll have that December 8th webinar at 2 o'clock our time, and I hope you guys can join us. And like Krista said, if there's anything you think we need to include, feel free to email us, and we'll do our best to get it included into the webinar. But when you have any questions on certification, you can definitely reach out to me or the mailbox, and PowerPoint will be going out once this is done, and you'll have the email addresses available as well. And anything else?
So, Monica, I think you have the last word. And with that, I'd like to thank both Monica and Krista for your information and insight. And I'd also like to thank our attendees for joining us today. We hope to see you again on December 8th. And in the meantime, thank you very much and have a terrific rest of the day. This now concludes today's webinar. Goodbye.